Welcome to episode 26 of the Perrysburg Podcast. I'm your host and Perrysburg resident Kim Newlove. Today's episode kicks off a three-part series about planes, trains, and automobiles. Part 1 today is airports, the type of airports that we locals use for commercial flights. I'm not talking about general aviation, this is about commercial flights. If you're new to this podcast, welcome. The Perrysburg Podcast is an informational podcast for three groups of listeners: prospective residents who are considering a move to Perrysburg and might be planning a visit, new Perrysburg residents who have been here for less than 12 months, and current residents who have been here for more than a year. We talk about what's in Perrysburg and why people like to live here. You can find the show notes for this episode on perrysburgpodcast.com. If you're planning a visit because you're interested in moving here, or if you're fairly new here, this episode is for you. Before we get started, though, I just want to acknowledge that the internet, of course, is a great resource. I'm sure you will check there too, but this podcast provides some insights that a local can only give. Google can't necessarily deliver what I'm about to say. With that being said, let's get started. I stopped into AAA in Perrysburg just the other day, and according to Claire at the front desk, most Perrysburg residents use Detroit Metro Airport and Toledo Express Airport for commercial flights. And I agree with that. I am 45 years old. I have always lived in northwestern Ohio, and over the years, those are the two airports that I have flown out of: Toledo Express Airport and Detroit Metro Airport. The airport code for Toledo Express Airport is TOL, and the airport code for Detroit Metro Airport is DTW. DTW, or Detroit Metro Airport, is my first choice airport for business and vacation trips. It's safe, modern, and efficient, in my opinion. There are plenty of airlines to choose from, and it's only about an hour from my house on a good day. I take I-75 North to 275 North, and then I take the Eureka Road exit. Eureka Road. Under ideal conditions, you can get from your doorstep in Perrysburg to the gate in about 90 minutes. Worst case scenario, though, it takes as long as it takes. I like to leave my house at least 2.5 hours before a flight. Why is that? I've got about 5 reasons: traffic, weather, parking, security, and the walk to the gate. The good news is that no matter how long it takes you to get to the gate, as long as your flight's on time, you're on your way. One of the downsides of living in rural northwestern Ohio is that we don't have a major metropolitan airport in our backyard. We have to travel a little ways. Traffic hiccups can happen on the way to traveling to that airport. Now, I know what it's like to travel to another city, and you probably do too. There's always that moment when you're at your hotel and you need to figure out how much time is it going to take me to get from my resort or hotel to the gate of my out-of-town airport. So with that in mind, if you're not from Perrysburg or you're new to town, let's talk about what can change that ideal 90-minute plan that I talked about earlier into more like 2.5 hours or more. So we're going to talk briefly about the following 5 things one at a time: traffic, weather, parking, security, and the walk to the gate. Let's start with traffic. Oh, it's the thorn in everybody's side. Everybody hates sitting in their car and not going. I hate traffic. And when I say traffic, I mean construction and just a whole bunch of cars on the road. Not just one or the other, both combined is what I mean by traffic. If you're a local, you know that various parts of I-75 and 275 are frequently under construction. It's so frustrating. And depending on the time of the day, traffic can be pretty heavy. The Detroit metro area is a major metropolitan area, and there is lots of traffic. Either do some research on the local traffic and the construction projects, or just give yourself extra time to drive from Perrysburg to Detroit. Some good resources are the ODOT website, that's the Ohio Department of Transportation's website, the MDOT website, that's the Michigan Department of Transportation website, and Google Maps. That's all I'm going to say about traffic. Give yourself plenty of time. How about the weather? How does weather affect your commute to the airport? Well, in perfect weather, of course, there's nothing to worry about. But this is Ohio, and we get rain, fog, snow, ice, sleet, hail, tornadoes, and more. You know it if you live here. Let's move on. Just factor the weather into your drive time. As I released this episode on January 19th of 2024, we had school cancellations just this week on Tuesday and Wednesday due to icy roads and just plain old cold weather. The weather here in Northwest Ohio is no joke. You'll find out fast if you move here from a warmer climate. Sometimes rain and fog will affect your commute to the airport too. It's not just the winter weather you need to worry about. Keep an eye on the weather anytime you travel. What's the parking situation like at Detroit Airport? It depends on which terminal you fly out of and how long it takes to get to the terminal from the parking lot or the parking garage. Under ideal conditions, you can park and get to the terminal in a matter of minutes. Most of my trips to Detroit Airport are not even worth talking about because they go so smoothly. Sometimes, however, there are long lines to get into the parking garages, or the parking garage is full, or the shuttle from the parking lot to the terminal is hard to find. Here's just one example for you. I had a business trip to New Orleans in mid-December of 2022. I was flying Delta out of the McNamara terminal. The parking garage closest to my airline was completely full. That was the first time that had ever happened to me in my entire life. In fact, I did not even know that was possible. So I had to drive to a parking structure that was farther away and take a shuttle back to the McNamara terminal. I could not find the shuttle at first, and once I found it, I had to wait outside for about 20 minutes. I was traveling to New Orleans in December. The weather is 80 degrees and sunny in December. I did not bring a winter coat because I thought I'd be taking a short walk from the parking garage to the terminal. Instead, I was very cold outside while I was standing by the sign for the shuttle. I hope this type of thing does not happen to you, but it happened to me. And it could happen to you too, so give yourself plenty of time to park. How about security? Security's tricky. It always depends on how busy the airport is. If you go at peak time, it's going to take you 30 minutes or more. Just see what the airport recommends maybe on the website, but if it were up to me, I would say calculate about 30 minutes at least. And quick tip, at the McNamara terminal, there is a hotel attached to the airport. I believe it's called the Westin. I kind of cheat. I typically go through the security checkpoint at that hotel. It's faster than any other security line that I have ever been in at McNamara Terminal. Once you clear security, how long does it take to get to your gate? How long does it take you to walk there? I would say give yourself at least 10 minutes. Detroit Airport is a big airport. It's big enough to have a train inside. There is a train inside that moves passengers to the farther away gates. There's a map of DTW online. If you're headed there for the first time, take a look at the map. Bottom line, give yourself enough time to walk to your gate. That flight to New Orleans that I mentioned just a few minutes ago was an early morning flight, and I only budgeted 2 hours to get from my doorstep to the gate. My flight was boarding when I finally got to the gate. Another 10 minutes and I may have missed my flight. I don't know how much time you like to give yourself to get on a plane, but my new minimum is 2.5 hours. In my humble opinion, you're rolling the dice if you only give yourself 90 minutes. That's 90 minutes from your house to Detroit to drive, park, get through security, and walk to your gate, especially in January, which it is right now when it might snow. Be careful. I gave a domestic flight example with that New Orleans flight, but Detroit Airport is definitely my preferred airport for domestic and international travel. I only have one example for you. Back in 2004, I took a direct flight from Detroit to Frankfurt, Germany. The first flight that I booked got canceled, unfortunately, but it's a big enough airport that they have multiple flights from Detroit to Frankfurt, Germany in one day. So they were able to reschedule me on a flight later that same day. If you are on an international flight, give yourself extra time to get to the airport. I believe that's what the airport actually recommends. I think they want you in the building and checked in at least an hour before your flight leaves. Speaking of international flights, I have a bit of trivia for you. Detroit is actually not the nearest international airport to Perrysburg. There is a closer one. Do you know what it is? It is the Erie Ottawa International Airport in Port Clinton, Ohio. The airport code is PCW. If you guessed PCW, give yourself a pat on the back. I did not know that. DTW is 58 miles from my house, and PCW is only 50. I didn't know that PCW even existed until my husband worked for Amazon in Rossford in 2020. Now, if you're thinking, what does the nearest international airport have to do with Amazon? I gotcha. According to Google, fulfillment centers are often named after an International Air Transport Association airport code, or IATA code. This is their fulfillment center code. The Amazon Fulfillment Center in Rossford is also called PCW-1. It is named after the nearest international airport, which is PCW in Port Clinton. If you ever get a package from Amazon and the code PCW1 is on it, it might be from the Amazon Fulfillment Center in nearby Rossford. Now, if you're not familiar with the Perrysburg area, Rossford is our neighbor to the northeast. Before I wrap up this trivia moment here, I just want to say that although PCW is an international airport, it is listed as a general aviation facility, not a commercial one. So this is not the type of airport that you would typically take a commercial flight out of. That ends the trivia portion of this episode. Now, how about Toledo Express Airport? What do I use that for? In the year 2024, absolutely nothing. I do not fly out of Toledo Express Airport. It is a nice little airport, and I have been there many, many times. It's safe to use, it's easy to get to. It only takes, probably 25 minutes from my house to the airport. Last time I went there, parking was plentiful, security was quick, and the walk to the gate was short. What's not to like? I have not flown out of Toledo Express Airport for probably a decade, so I can't say how modern it is. But I can say that why I haven't flown out of Toledo Express Airport is because they don't have flights to where I need to go. According to Claire at AAA in Perrysburg, the only flights out of Toledo Express Airport go to 3 places. They are Sanford, Florida, Punta Gorda, Florida, and Phoenix, Arizona. 30 years ago, I could take a flight to Chicago O'Hare Airport or Cincinnati's airport and then connect to pretty much anywhere. That is not the case now. I have good memories of flying out of Toledo Express, though. One time, I flew from Toledo to Bozeman, Montana. My sister was going to Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana at the time. She was going to college there. I took a few connecting flights, and my brother was with me. He was 16 at the time. I was 17. And we had nothing but time to burn, so we took connecting flights, and we eventually wound up in Bozeman. Side note, that was kind of a sad summer because I met my parents out there who had driven my sister there with all of her stuff. And on the way back, I turned 18 on the road in the car, and my grandpa died just as we were getting back to Pemberville, where I lived at the time. So kind of a sad ending to that trip, but it all started at Toledo Express Airport. Again, the flights offered at Toledo Express Airport are not what I need right now, so Detroit Metro is my go-to airport. If you're new to town or looking to move here, I hope this episode helps. Until you get comfortable with the area, my advice is just to give yourself plenty of time to get to your airport of choice, whether that's Toledo Express, Detroit, or somewhere else. Join me next week when I talk about the train situation in the Perrysburg area. Thank you for listening to episode 26 of the Perrysburg Podcast. Please visit perrysburgpodcast.com to read the show notes. In the show notes, you'll find a link to Detroit Metro Airport, Toledo Express Airport, the Erie Ottawa International Airport, ODOT, MDOT, and more. If you know someone who might like to learn about the airports that we Perrysburg residents use, please share this episode with them. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe to or follow the Perrysburg Podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thanks again for listening. I will talk to you next Friday.